Okay, thanks, Megan. Welcome, everyone, to Billing and Payment Application. Hopefully that's what you were expecting to see today when you logged in, because that's what we're doing. I'm Bob Scher. Joining us today is Lori Curley. We'll be instructors for this session, and we'll be leading you in the PowerPoint presentation. We also have Mike Barnett, Nick Sellers, and Sherry Chaffaye with us today. They'll be walking us through some of the demos and leading sessions to demonstrate some of our workstream capability and in Workday and billing capability. We'll all be sharing the responsibilities of taking attendance, keeping track of time, and helping maintain a list of topics for follow-up. So if you do have questions that we're not able to answer today, we'll put those in our parking lot and get back to you with answers as we receive them. We'll also be asking some poll questions and managing the chat room. So if you have questions, feel free to interrupt and ask your questions, or if you'd like to put them in the chat room, we'll be looking for those too. So for today's session, we'll be reviewing how spend occurs and post to an award. Spend is what we refer to as expenditures today. We'll also review the award record to become familiar with where we can view billing and receivable information. Then we'll walk through the process to review expenses and see how we can place expenses on hold if needed so that we don't bill them at the time we generate an invoice. Next, we'll review the process to create an invoice for a cost reimbursable or transaction expense. Sherry will lead us through that demonstration. Then Nick will provide a demo of the process to create an invoice for a letter of credit award and show how we record a letter of credit drawdown in Workday. Then we'll be back to Sherry to review the installment billing process, which involves two invoices, although spoiler alert, one of the invoices generated is the same as that which we use in cost reimbursable billing. And last but not least, we'll review the process of recording payments in Workday and applying them to invoices. Here are the objectives for today's course. Today we'll gain knowledge in the processes used to generate invoices in Workday, including letter of credit billing, and then we'll see how payments are recorded and applied to invoices. This slide demonstrates the 5 courses in the awards and grants curriculum. Everyone should have attended a session on creating awards and setting up billing schedules. Today's course builds upon the first 2 courses. We'll walk through the process of invoicing sponsors and applying payments. Practice labs will begin soon for fiscal services and financial services. In those, we'll begin practicing in Workday and using the labs to do a deeper dive on some specific billing scenarios. So we're excited to have you all here today. Please remember to be attentive and participate actively. Please remove any distractions such as cell phones if you're able. Please turn on your video if your internet bandwidth allows. We love to see you. Ask questions throughout. As I said earlier, you can do this by just saying, I have a question, and we'll pause. Or you can enter a question through the chat window. And we'd love to hear your ideas and feedback. We do ask that you mute your mic when you're not speaking so that you don't interrupt the person who is speaking. So before we begin, are there any questions at this point? Billing and payment application, any burning issues that you've been wondering about, how we'll do them in Workday? Okay. So we'll begin by reviewing some information on spend and settlement. This information will be presented as a high-level overview of these processes. Please note that this information is for awareness only. OSP staff are not responsible for spending on grants, but we know you'll be reviewing some costs on grants and may receive questions from PIs, grants managers, and others. So we wanted to share some basic information about spending with you as it relates to the grants process. The term spend in Workday is what we refer to as expenditures today. Spend on a grant requires the grant work tag to connect the spend to the correct grant. Spend must also have the the grant work tag along with the fund FD 520 associated with it to make it billable on a grant. The grant work tag is the only way to connect the spend to a particular grant. So as expenses post to a grant, it's important to have appropriate expenses on the correct grant so that PIs can see an accurate picture of their award's financial status. So when we talk about spend, there are a few different types, and we'll cover those in the next slide. So as part of the larger picture, when a PI has an award that is funded and they have money to spend on research and associated expenses, how much they have to spend is set up in the financial system based on the notice of award. So we in OSP must get the billing and the authorized amount entered correctly, or that can affect the PI's spend. Custom validations, there may be specific restrictions around certain spend categories on an award. We're able to set up custom validations or systems checks to help enforce some of these restrictions. When the proper spend restrictions are placed on an award, the system will warn a user that a particular expense is not allowable before it works through the process and is incorrectly billed to the sponsor. So all expenses in Workday will initiate inside Workday, unlike PeopleSoft. This means there will be no more e-request, e-travel, or HRA. There are a number of types of expenses, including supply chain, which goes through requisition, purchase order, and supply invoice to be posted to a grant. Expenses that come through expense reports, payroll, journals, journal entries, and tuition. Grants functionality crosses into functionality within other work streams when it comes to spending. So spend occurs and is billed for sponsors in OSP and customers in other areas of the university. Because we share a single financial system, some of our processes you will see will use the term customer when referring to a sponsor. And as in PeopleSoft, there are certain expenses that will encumber in Workday, allowing PIs to plan spend on their awards. So let's define settlement. Settlement is the process of approving spend and cutting a check to whomever we owe funds. This process confirms and posts the amounts in the general ledger as well. So the impact of settlement on the grants billing, if a PI at Ohio State purchases something on a grant, we must pay the vendor before we can invoice a sponsor for the expense. And this is different from PeopleSoft. In PeopleSoft, we don't necessarily have to cut the check and issue a check to a vendor before that expense will be billable to the sponsor. This is new to Workday. So we have no process documents for settlement and OSP, as this process is not the responsibility of OSP, and is a process that is scheduled to run automatically. So as an example, if a PI buys supplies for a grant through Boston Scientific, we can't view the expense on an award record until payment has been initiated to Boston Scientific. So settlement is scheduled to run every day at specific times. So if a supplier invoice has not been settled, it will not be billable in Workday. It's important to know why you may or may not see something on a grant. That may depend on whether it has been settled. So keep in mind also that some types of expenses do not have to be settled before we can bill them. Among those are payroll and journal entries. So now we'll have a brief knowledge check here to test your knowledge on the information that I've just presented. We'll have a poll that we'll show here in just a few moments. There we go. So we have a few questions here on the topics that I just covered. So please take a few moments to go through and record your answers. A few more people yet to answer, so we'll give a few more minutes, a few more seconds, I should say. Okay. Okay, so let's look at our results. Okay. So for our polling results, question number 1, a change in moving to Workday is we must pay the vendor before we can invoice the sponsor. That question was a true or false question, and the correct answer on that was true. So congratulations. Looks like most of you picked up on that piece of information. Number 2, OSP staff will have the security role to run the settlement process and will need to run it on a regular basis. Looks like we were about almost half and half there on a little bit more saying false than true, but the correct answer is false. OSP staff will not be doing the settlement process, thank goodness. That's one less thing that we have to do once we go into Workday. Question number 3, what is used to tie the expense spend to an award? Looks like most of you picked up on that piece of information also. It is the grant work tag. We must have that on an expense, an article of spend in order for that to show up on a particular grant. Okay. Well, thank you for participating in the poll. And now we'll continue with our process. So expenses have occurred using the grant work tag, and we need to process an invoice. The first step that we'll do today, once we get into Workday, will be to review an award record to confirm some information about the award before proceeding. Before we can create invoices, we'll take a few minutes to review an award record. As we have seen in the previous courses, the information listed in this slide is important to review and confirm before we start generating any invoices. We'll focus on one award for each billing type in our demos today, so reviewing the award record is more manageable. Similarly to today, we'll be creating most invoices in Workday in a scheduled batch, so we will not have to manually create each invoice after go live. Before running any manual invoicing, we need to review expenses to see if any of them need to be placed on hold. This may also be the time to review and confirm whether a billing schedule should be placed on hold. For today, we'll discuss the process we'll use for placing individual expenses on hold only. So this process applies to any type of billing. So we're reviewing it now before we jump into how to invoice and apply payments for cost reimbursable, letter of credit, and installment billing. There may be a reason we're not able to invoice a sponsor for a particular expense. We're able to place this expense on hold from being billed if needed. Generally, we'll be following this review process for final invoices to determine the allowability of costs. Costs that post past the end date are reviewed to make sure spend is allowable and within the grant dates. Costs that post during the grant cycle have been reviewed and approved by accounts payable, purchasing, or financial services for availability, allowability, and allocability. So during the grant life cycle, we're not normally reviewing costs to see if they need to be put on hold. Okay. So now at this point, I'll turn things over to Lori to walk us through the process of reviewing an award for billable transactions. Okay, there we go. So Lori has the screen. Are there any questions before we go into the demo on what we've talked about so far?
Bob, I have a question.
Okay.
So in terms of the past end date, is it still going to be like PeopleSoft where if the service is happening within the performance period, but the check isn't cut until after, will it still be allowable in Workday? Kind of like with PeopleSoft, things sometimes post after the end date, but they were for things that happened during the period.
Yeah, I mean, there'll still be a period after the award is over when costs can still post to it. I mean, that's pretty much expected, especially in a university setting, because it takes some time for some costs to go through and post. Put, subcontractor invoices. If you have a subcontract that ends on the same day as the award, we have to get that last invoice in. Biweekly payroll posts after the award is ended. So those types of expenses will still post through to the grant and be allowable.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. That would be a shock to our PIs if we cut them off on the last day, wouldn't it? If there are no other questions, then Lori can get started.
All right, well, good. Hi, everybody. I am Lori Curley, as Bob mentioned. I'm one of the co-managers in fiscal services. I'm going to walk through just the basic screens that fiscal services, our department, would look at when we're doing an invoice, usually for manual review or maybe when it's being set up. So right now you can see my home screen in Workday. We are all getting very good at working these different options in here. The award that we're going to look at, I've already typed in. It's AWD 102664. And I'm going to go ahead and search. And if you've been in Workday, sometimes you have to put in that grants category to actually identify that award. We're just going to review the award record high level. We know you guys are all experts on entering this data, but what I'm going to show you is just the important fields that fiscal services would look at and just pay closer attention to. Obviously, we want to know the sponsor, and it's Indiana State University. We're looking at the dates. Start and end dates are very important, as Todd mentioned. We pay close attention to those start and end dates. Expenses should be incurred within those start and end dates. So just kind of going through some of these tabs, high level, knowing it's a flow through is always good for our, the definite processing of it. The basic information there is important. Funding details, we want to know what the budget is. We want to know, how much is remaining to spend. This authorized amount is going to be important to our installment process. And so we'll kind of talk about that when we get to installment processing. Special conditions, very important to us to see that residual funds disposition. And of course, notes are very important to fiscal services. This one actually has regular notes and then the billing notes. So our department pays very close attention to these billing notes. This one has good information about final invoice due 60 days after end date, must be marked final, serves as a fiscal final report. Sometimes we like to see a contact in here or who we're sending the invoice to. So good information in here is very vital to the success of billing for us. So when you're looking at an award for us, we're looking at what expenses are available to bill. So in Workday, there's a couple of different places to look at it within the system to see those expenses. Today, we kind of use either project resources, queries, or we look in the PI portal. So in Workday, it's nice that we'll be able to see what's available, what's already posted to the grant. So you can go right into the billing and receivables tab and schedules. And you want to select the right schedule for the grant that you're looking at and go ahead and open that up. And this actually brings up the bill schedule. So this is something that fiscal services is setting up. And if you scroll down at the bottom here and look at the line, it shows the basic information of the award, of the grant and of the award line, I'm sorry, the from and to dates. It's also showing how much has already been billed on the grant. It would show any billing in progress, and it shows transactions ready to bill. And that's what we're looking at today. So in this screenshot, and we're not sure exactly what the sponsored program officers have for security, but in our screens, we do have the availability to click on that amount, and it opens up another window. And it actually shows you the details of the expenses that have posted to that grant. You could drill down a little further, the magnifying glass or the related actions here, to find out exactly who this, it's actually a payroll expense. And you could actually see who that payroll expense is for. It does show the budget date, the billable amount, the status of it, ready to bill, and the contract line. This information, obviously we can review it right there in that screen, or we can download it to Excel. And we may do that for further review of those expenses. So it does give you a lot of information, just clicking on those tabs there. So there's another place I want to show you. If you go back to the award header page, and the next place is in award lines and award line summary. And that actually shows you, you're showing the grant, and you can kind of, you could click to the bill schedule here, but it's showing you right here, cost reimbursable, scheduled, in progress, and ready to bill. So we know that that's ready to bill right now. And again, it's blue hyperlinked. You could click on it, and it opens up that same window that we looked at before that shows the details of expenses. So, so those are some places that we would look to just verify that there are expenses ready to bill on the grant. There's a couple of different ways, obviously, to search for the data. There's another way that fiscal services would use to put specific expenses on hold if we were asked to, if maybe we only needed to bill through a certain date. And so we would be able to go in and be able to view that information. So, and we will get more into that when we do the labs with our department in processing. Okay, so I'm going to head back to the PowerPoint. Okay. You should see the PowerPoint. Is that correct? Okay, good. All right, so there are a few more items to cover before we demonstrate each type of billing. We will review the basic billing requirements. Please keep in mind that today we are focusing on the different billing types that we encounter in Workday. We will walk through the specific types of billing that occurs. And today we're going to show you, we're going to demonstrate what it looks like when we do ad hoc billing, when it's required or requested. As an example, this would be if we were billing something for a final invoice, if we wanted to review those specific expenses to bill something immediately, or with if we had an installment and we needed to bill a lump sum to a sponsor, maybe at the contract activation. So we would show you that as an installment billing. And then we are going to talk about letter of credit billing. We typically do not bill letter of credits by one award. However, we're going to show you that today. We may use it when we are looking at invoices or awards that have 5-year ending funds, and we need to draw those down immediately. So we do use that processing for billing one LOC award occasionally. Therefore, the demonstrations we will be reviewing will occur when those manual invoicing reviews are happening. Most of our bills will process in our monthly batch process. So today we're going to just show you some simple examples, and we'll save the complex ones for our lab time. And as a reminder, our billing batch will still be scheduled to run on the 3rd business day of each month. So actually next Wednesday is when our billing batch will occur in PeopleSoft, and we're going to keep that same timing with Workday. Before we can proceed with billing, there are a few items that need to be present within the system before we can invoice a sponsor. First, we will review what needs to be in place in order to invoice the sponsor. And then we will review the types of invoices as a refresher from our last course on bill schedule setup. And we're just going to review those types of invoices. To invoice any award within Workday, a billing schedule must be set up for the award lines. And this is what we showed in our previous training. This will occur when the award is sent to the billing specialist team lead for review. And we can't bill without those bill schedules set up. So it's very important to have that set up. When billing for transaction or letter of credit types of awards, there must be spend or expenses associated with that award. And it must have that fund FD 520 and grant work tag associated with it. That tells the system that there are billable charges on the award and grant. So that's very important. And so also those expenses or spend must be settled. And settlement is that automatic process that Bob described earlier. It refers to paying the vendor for the expenses before we can bill the sponsor for the charges. And as he mentioned, some types of expenses don't go through the settlement process. Payroll does not go through it, and journal entries. So those get automatically just posted. For our installment type of billing, you will see that we must have an installment amount entered, and that tells the system how much we want to bill the sponsor. There are several different types of invoices, and so we're going to just do a quick refresher of them. I know we talked about it in our last training. The types of invoices all have the OSP prefix. So we must select one of those in the system because we are sharing the Workday system with the rest of the university, and we want to make sure we pick the right type of invoice. OSP fixed amount is most commonly used with our prepaid or installment billing in Workday. The no print is typically going to be used when we do a letter of credit bill, but we may find some other circumstances to use this type of invoice. OSP special handling is when the sponsor requires backup to be sent with the invoice, or we're sending the invoice to multiple addresses. OSP sponsor form is just that. They require a form to be completed with the invoicing information, and we comply with that. So also maybe attaching that sponsor form within the notes section of the award is going to be very important for us, or the attachments, something that we'll be able to access that form. OSP standard is our old RF invoice. It's our basic invoicing, no special processing required, and it's our most common one we use. And any of the above, except for the no print, can be selected with the cost share edition. And just as a reminder, the cost share invoice will print on a separate page. So the type of invoice selected when billing schedule is set up is very important because it drives the invoice and how it's created. Okay, now we will do a poll. And I'm going to launch this poll, and please read it and answer the question and select all that apply. Okay, answers are coming in. And it's not meant to be a trick question, but the question is, what must be complete in order to invoice a sponsor for transaction billing? And we're asking you to select all that apply. And the answer really is all of them. So we have to have a billing schedule set up. We must have the grant work tag associated with the spend. Spend must be approved and spend must be settled. So for transaction invoicing, which is invoicing on costs that have posted. We need all of those to occur. We'll talk about some differences with others. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. All right. Now we will walk through the process of invoicing for each type of billing. After a basic information on each, we will have a demonstration to review a simple scenario to create an invoice associated with each type of billing in Workday. Our first type of billing is transaction billing, which is our basic billing for expenses that have posted or settled to the grant. And in Workday, it means the expense was entered on the work tags and paid by OSU. The high-level overview process for transaction awards, in basic terms, we get the sponsor funds an award. The SPO sets up the award lines, grants, all your award tasks. The plan is set up and other key information in Workday. And then it's approved by the SPO manager. And then it is sent to fiscal services within Workday. And the team lead sets up the billing schedule for billing based off the sponsor's requirements. And so that information entered in Workday is very important to us. The PI spends on the grant. Supplier vendors are paid for expenses. Payroll is paid on the grant and posted. And then fiscal services will process a bill for the expenses, and we submit the invoice to the sponsor. And then the sponsor submits payment to us, which is applied to their invoice. So therefore, it is very important to have accurate information when creating the bill schedule. If anything is incorrect in this process, it could impact our billing. It may delay the sponsor from sending payment and interrupting our cash flow. So it's very important to have that accurate information. Now I will turn it over to Sherry to provide us with a demonstration creating an individual invoice with a transaction billing schedule. Okay, Sherry.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, my name's Sherry Shafai, and I'm with Bob and Lori's department. I'm an assistant manager in fiscal services. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so we're going to pick up from where Lori had left, where we had left off with Lori on determining if we have expenses on an award to bill. So we have determined that we do have expenses to bill. So since we've already looked at that, I'm on the award overview page, and I'm just going to go into the related actions tab by the award here and go to award and then create customer invoice for award grant transactions. And it brings up the header here for the search criteria, and it pulled it in based on the award. We could use, if we wanted to narrow our parameters down as far as dates, we could use some of these other fields, but since we've already determined that we want to bill everything that was displayed, we're just going to go ahead and click on the search button. And down here below, we do have the line item for the invoice to be created. And we do have an invoice amount available at $25,811.47. So I'm just going to enter the date, which is a required field. And generally, we'll use the current date for that. A lot of times when we're doing a manual invoice, if we're working on, say, the month's billing cycle, we would usually be using the previous month. So I just put in the 9/1 through 9/30 for the month of September, and go ahead and click on the invoice line to be created, and it's for Indiana State University, and I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And then I'm here on the refresh page, and I'm going to just go ahead and click on refresh. And just take a quick look at the background processes. And as you can see here, it ran in 2 seconds. That's pretty fast. Compared with PeopleSoft, cost reimbursable can take several minutes to run on a manual. So this is a great improvement for us. So we can go in and actually look at the invoice. The invoice number is CI-000-19576. I'm just going to go into that hyperlink. And as you can see here, the total invoice amount and the amount due, it's $10,031.27. It seemed like a slightly different number than we had, but anyway, we've got that there. So it's an OSP standard invoice. We've got the invoice numbers to Indiana State, and we also have the line detail for the invoice down here. So there's several lines of invoicing data. So once we viewed all that, we're going to create a PDF to either, most of the time now we're emailing it to the sponsor, but we could do a printout and mail it to the sponsor, but we want to go back up here to view customer invoice, to the invoice number and the related actions tab, and click here and go to customer invoice and then print customer invoice. And we got our friendly printer error here that I've been getting in every demo. So anyway, so if this had worked, I would have been able to go to this next page where I would have refreshed for the invoice print, and I would have gone down below here and off to the right, I would have had, once it refreshed, I would have had a PDF copy to pull up and show you, but I can't do it right now. So anyway, this is something that we still need to iron out as far as why I'm getting this error. So hopefully we'll figure that out soon. So the last thing I want to show you on the cost reimbursable invoicing process is if we wanted to, now that we've created this invoice, if we wanted to come back and look at this invoice at a different time, at a later time, we can do that. There's several ways of pulling up that invoice information. So the first way, within the award, we could pull it up. So I'm just going to go through the award and go to billing and receivables, and then click on the billing schedule. And then look at customer invoices. And we could see the one that we ran today. This is the CI-000-19576. So we could pull it up that way. I don't believe, since you're our audience today, the SPOs, I don't believe you'll be able to pull it up this way, but the other ways I'm going to show you, I believe you will be able to pull up the invoice information. So I'll go to the next way to do it. So we could actually, on this option, we could look at all of the invoices created for an award. So we can go, I'm just going to go back through the award again to the award overview page and click on the billing and receivables tab and view sponsor invoices for award. And as we can see here, this is our new invoice that we ran this morning or this afternoon. And so we can pull it up this way. And there's also a way to drill down to a little more detail, and it's very similar to what Lori looked at for when we were looking at the expenses on the award that were available to bill. We can go to award lines on the overview page, then go to award line summary, and then go to the billed amount and click on that hyperlink right there, and we can see that we had billed the 19576 invoice for $10,031.27. So we could pull it up that way. And just going to go back to the award again. Go back to our billing and receivables and view invoices. So this final way, I just wanted to pull up the invoice so I could copy it here. I didn't want that. Just copy the text. So then I just want to look under all of Workday since the entire university uses it. But I think I have to take that out. So you could actually just type in the invoice number itself and hit enter. And then I have to go under choose Workday, and we can pull it up that way as well. So there's several ways of getting to the information. So does anybody have any questions about cost reimbursable billing? Okay, if there are no questions, I'll turn things back to Lori.
Great, thanks, Sherry. One thing that may have happened is maybe when you put those specific dates in, you probably just got the expenses through September, which is what we wanted. So
Right.
that's probably why there was a difference in what we were showing as available to bill and what actually billed. And that's something that fiscal will get very good at doing. With
Yes.
Workday. So
that was a good way to demonstrate that.
yes, very good. Good way to show that. So. Okay. So now you should be back to yep, we should be on letter of credit. Okay, so the transaction billing is very common, and we're going to use that a lot and learn as we're showing you guys, we're learning a lot as well. So this is very good training for us to do. So you will notice in these demonstrations similarities when processing the different types of billing within Workday. And the search criteria is going to be the same for the looking up the invoices and everything. So it's very good information to have at this point. The next type of billing we will review today is letter of credit, or LOC billing. It's basically the same process to run an invoice within Workday as the transaction bill that Sherry showed. Essentially what it is doing, it is invoicing for expenses that have posted or settled to the grant. We have to have those expenses posted to the grant in order to build this type of bill in Workday. The only difference between transaction and letter of credit is there is a confirmation required when the funds are received from the sponsor. And we work with our counterpart department, financial services, to do that. We will start with a high-level overview of the LOC process. Then we will add some specifics about the LOC billing. We will briefly discuss what happens when there are discrepancies between the billed amount in Workday and the LOC drawdown amounts received by the bank. Then we will move into Workday and have a demonstration of the LOC process. Letter of credits are basically federal awards where we have been given the responsibility and security to access their system to draw down the amounts needed to cover the expenses. We currently process this type of billing weekly within our department. We schedule it immediately after the payroll is posted by the university. And that's because payroll is the largest type of expense posted to the grant. We can also invoice when needed. So if there is a large an expense that was posting to an award and we needed to bill it immediately, or 5-year ending funds, which we have a deadline for drawing down the funds, we could go ahead and bill an individual award for letter of credits. Fiscal services will still have the responsibility of processing the drawdown within each sponsor's online system, but we will not be showing any of this today. In general, the process is the same process we currently use within Workday. or I'm sorry, within PeopleSoft. But the only difference is that confirmation amount and approval. So at a high level, at the time of the award setup, the letter of credit document is added to the award header by the SPO. The PI incurs expenses on the grant using the grant work tag to connect to the award and grant. Fiscal Services processes that letter of credit invoicing for expenses that are posted and settled to the award. After the invoice is created, Fiscal Services will access the sponsor's system and do the drawdown of the funds. And usually that's within the same day. And that's done by a team lead 2 or a manager with that security. And then within Workday, a grants accounting manager in financial services will confirm the funds are received in the bank, and they will approve that amount within Workday. And we usually get the funds within 1 to 2 days of the bank. We do track that cash flow very closely. And the LOCs are a nice processing for us. It provides us more control over the cash flow. We can create invoices as needed based off the OSU schedule of payroll posting. We can do the drawdowns from the sponsor immediately, and we don't have to wait on the sponsor to send us a payment. So we can get the cash in right away and apply it to that invoice. Accuracy is very important to have the LOC document information set up when creating the award and the bill schedule. This must be accurate because we do draw in the sponsor system based on individual awards. So we need those numbers perfect. And LOC billing will be scheduled in batch or run manually by fiscal as needed. And we're going to get more into that when we do some additional training in the labs. To create invoices for LOC drawdowns, we do use the same process that we used in the last section for transaction or non-LOC awards. Both types of awards involve invoicing for expenses as they have posted or settled already on the grant. LOC does not have its own invoice type. So we use OSP, no print. And basically that's because we do not send invoices to the sponsor for our letter of credits. And just as all of our awards to invoice with any of the billing types that we're talking about today, the bill schedule must be set up for the award line. The spend must be associated with the grant and the grant work tag and that fund. If you want us to bill it to the sponsor, it must have the FD 520. The spend must be approved and settled within the university's process. LOC invoices will be generated in their own batch. We will do those specifically because, as I mentioned, we do process those weekly. And which we base it off of that bill cycle of letter of credit as we specified that in our bill schedule setup in the last training. In Workday, the LOCs are billed, the amounts are drawn from the sponsor system and drawn confirmation sent to grants accounting or financial services to confirm the amount received in the bank is equal to the draw process. This is the difference going into Workday. So when we process the letter of credit bills, sometimes there are amounts that can't be drawn from the sponsor or credits that can't be returned within the sponsor system. The amounts unable to draw are usually because the sponsor has not added additional years funding into the payment management system, or the sponsor possibly have de-obligated some funding. So we would see a difference in their system and of what maybe we're showing as a budget amount. The credits are common with specific sponsors because Department of Energy, NIFA, and Department of Education do not allow us to return those credits in their draw system. What we do is we track those credits and either offset them with a future debit, or when we close the project out, if there's still a credit there, we return the funds to the sponsor with a check. So when this occurs, each billing specialist assigned to that letter of credit sponsor is required to detail and document what the issue is, to provide backup with the draw, and the amount of the draw requested would be adjusted based off of that difference. And these amounts are going to be tracked and used to either adjust the future draw or, like I said, return the funds to the sponsor. If this amount was not identified in advance and the draw amount requested was not equal to what the bank, what the funds we've received in the bank, then the grants manager, the grants accounting manager, should send back that workday request for the letter of credit with a comment about the discrepancy, and ask that the billing lead responsible for doing that LOC draw, they should update the billing information for that drawdown. If an invoice is more than the amount of the eligible draw, there will be remaining open AR on that, and we'll wait for that until the funds are available to draw. We do follow up with, we may follow up with the sponsor program officer. We might follow up directly with the sponsor if something hasn't been added into their system. If an invoice is less than the amount received, we would not have expenses to apply funds to, and we may need to refund the sponsor when we do close out that, that award. We will get into more specifics of these in the labs, and we work closely with grants accounting or financial services. And so we will be doing some more of these tests in the lab process. Now I will turn it over to Nick to walk us through a demo of the process to create an invoice with the letter of credit award and record a letter of credit drawdown in Workday.
Thank you, Lori. Let me go ahead and share my screen now. Okay, can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so as Lori just discussed, we're gonna go through an example of billing an LOC and then walking through recording the LOC draw. This is, she also mentioned this is a little different than what our normal processing is, because we typically do about 3 times a month, we'll do a batch LOC billing process, and then at the end of the month, we'll do an ad hoc one. So this would be more, this is more specific to billing one individual award. If we were looking at it for, you know, if it had maybe 5-year ending funds, or if we needed to do a final draw or something to that effect, where we just needed to do a one-off. And the first part of this is going to look pretty similar to Sherry's demo, because it again is doing a transaction billing. But we'll go ahead and walk through this. I've already pulled up my award. So what we're going to do is go into the related actions tab right here. And we go to award and then create customer invoice for award grant transactions. And okay, so we get to this screen here. Since we did it through the award page, it's pulled that up right here, that automatically populates in. This area here is search criteria. So if we needed to drill this down any further for any reason, you know, we could put more criteria in these fields, but none of these are required, and we already have the award information in here. So we're just going to go ahead, rather than worry about filling anything else in here. We're going to go ahead and do a search for our billable amounts. So we click search. We should see some data pop up down here at the bottom of the screen. And we have, and it gives just some kind of basic information: bill to sponsor, the award, contract end dates, letter credits, all the way down here to our the amount that we're looking to invoice, which in this case is $54,115.01. So the output for customer invoice, the invoice date is required. So we want to do that the date that we're processing, which today is the 30th. The customer customer invoice from and to dates would be if we want to see a billing period on the invoice itself. This being an LOC and a no print, this is pretty much not applicable for this example. So I'm going to just go ahead and leave those blank. We don't really need to fill in anything in. They're not required fields as well. So what I want to do now is click on the check mark, since we've already looked and seen this is the amount that we're looking to bill. We can go ahead and check this mark here and then click OK. And that brings us to this screen where we could refresh. It should be done here momentarily. And it is. We go to background processes. Process took us 3 seconds, so really quite a bit of time savings from what we're doing now in PeopleSoft. We go back out to the invoice page here, and I'm going to go ahead and, not that it's applicable for this example, but I know Sherry was having an issue pulling up the invoice, so I'll do a quick demo here of doing the printed invoice. So if we click on the hyperlink for it, it's taking a second. It should bring us to our next screen. It's taking a minute. Internet's running a little slow, I guess. Okay, so this page here just kind of gives some basic information about what's been invoiced, amount over here, the company, bill to customer, all that information. And if we go up here to where the invoice number is and click on the related actions tab, we can come down here to the first one that says customer invoice. And then down at the bottom of that drop down is print customer invoice. And click on that. And it should send us up to a screen where if we click refresh, it should be done here momentarily. And I need to hit it one more time. And we're all set, 100% complete. We have our PDF over here. So if I click on that, it should pop up with our PDF, which again, in this particular case, it just says do not print and a no issue payment address up at the top, and that's all. If this were a standard transaction billing, there'd be a lot more data on there. But in this particular case, being an LOC, we marked it as no print since we really don't need to paper copy invoices or anything like that. So I just wanted to show you what we do as far as doing a print. So from there, we're done with that part. What we need to do now, what we would do here after we build the invoice is go into the sponsor system and make our draw request. And that would tell us if there's any sort of adjustments. If for some reason we went in and there wasn't sufficient funding to draw the full amount, or if we looked in our system and saw that there was some previous AR credits that might affect our amount, we'd know that. Then we'd do our draw, and then once we have our total that we did draw, we'd go into record the LOC draw at that point. So what we're going to do in the search header right here, put in record. And it's the first one that pops up. Record letter of credit drawdown. So click on that, and we have a few fields here that are required that we need to fill in here so that we can run or pull up our record. So what we want to do here is put in company, which is always going to be the Ohio State University. It should be the first one, and it is. Sponsor here actually refers to our bill to sponsor. I did just for your information, if you need to pull up a second page in Workday here, you can do a right click and then do duplicate tab. I already did that, so I'd have the view award information up as well while I'm running through this. And if you're on the sponsor tab here, it gives sponsor, but then bill to sponsor. So even though this page asks for sponsor, it's really looking for the bill to sponsor. So we want to put in U.S. Department of Agriculture right here. So we're going to put U.S. Department of Ag. Should come up, and it does. And then if we go back out here, we can see right down here is our letter of credit. This is USDA NIFA. Excuse me. So we want to put that in this box right here that says letter of credit. And there's a small drop-down menu here of different options for this particular bill to sponsor, and NIFA is one of them. So we're going to click on that. Once we've filled in all three of these, the bank account information populates in here. And it has our Chase Bank account, which is good. So what we want to do now that we've filled out everything on this page is click OK. And it will send us hopefully quickly to our next page where we will record our drawdown amounts. It's thinking. Depending on how large of an LOC, we've found that some of them take longer than others. But yeah, this one didn't actually seem to take too long. So that's good. So basically what pulls up here is a report that gives us all the awards for that letter of credit. And if there was any like outstanding items, it would show up in the amount to draw over here in the far right box. And that's the field that's actually editable to us. So it looks like this was the amount that we billed on our award that we ran through. So actually the only AR right now is this one that we just ran. And it looks like I passed it up. Let's see. Let me see right here. Okay. So if for some reason I had gone in and we couldn't have drawn this full amount, or, you know, like I said, if there was previous credits on it or something like that, that impacted how much we had to draw, we could edit this field right here by just clicking in and then editing to what we need to record. We're going to assume for the purposes of this example that we were able to draw that full amount. So I'm not going to touch that field. And then again, if we go up to the top here, I meant to show you this before, it gives our total right here, which is the 54,115. And then it will also give that same total down here at the bottom of the screen, right here in the right corner. So that's the amount that we want to record, because that was how much we billed for this and how much we're assuming we were able to draw for it as well. So if for some reason we needed to save this and come back to it, we could click this button here that says save for later. But for the purposes of this demo, we're going to go ahead and just submit this. So I will click submit. And should take a second. And it says up next, grant accounting manager. So basically what's happened now is we've billed it, we went in and drew it, we have now recorded it in the system that we drew it. So it should, so the grants accounting manager will get a notification of that. And once the payment has come in, assuming the payment ties out, then they'd be able to finish the process there. If for some reason there was any sort of discrepancy, the grants accounting manager would bounce that back to me, would return it to me so that I could make the correction on it and then send it back. So that is pretty much this process. Do we have any questions at this point? Is there anything in the chat, or anyone have any questions they wanted to ask at this point? No.
Nothing in the chat.
Nothing in the chat? Okay, well, I guess if there's nothing at this point, I think we're going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break at this point. So it's 2:05 now. What, we want to come back at about 2:15, or do we want to round up 20?
Let's try 2:15.
All right, let's shoot for 2:15. Let's try to get back here in 10 minutes. So go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and we'll see you back here shortly.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, welcome back. It's always good to take a break in the middle of these trainings. And this is, I think, our fourth one this week. So we're definitely glad it's Friday and ready to be done for the week. Our final type of billing we will review today is called installment billing. And we will review this process and show you an invoice within Workday. In PeopleSoft, we would call this type scheduled billing or prepaid billing. So in Workday, the name changes to installment billing. And basically what it is this is when we are billing based on a set schedule or when deliverables have been met. The schedule is preferred to be provided at the time of the contract negotiation by the sponsor, or as you know, if deliverables are being met, when the PI has completed those deliverables, and communication will be provided to the billing specialist. The schedule and the amounts are entered in Workday, and it's preferred to be entered in advance in order to have the invoices created on time and processed within the system. Installment billing has at times been referred to as hybrid billing, since it uses two processes within Workday for invoice creation. It actually creates two invoices. One is an installment invoice and another is utilization invoice. The installment invoice is created based off that entered schedule. So it's based off of the amounts that we're billing to the sponsor. And then once expenses have posted and are settled onto the grant, the Workday system will process a utilization invoice, and it is run similar to the way that the transaction and letter of credit bill ran. And we're going to demonstrate both of those. The high-level overview of installment billing is once an award is funded and the sponsor says they will send funds in based off of that specific schedule, an installment billing schedule is created. There are important items as part of the setup that must be complete so that billing occurs appropriately. We saw those items when we set up the billing schedule because it is a little bit different setting up the bill schedule for the installment process. And that was in our previous training, we reviewed those things. And as a refresher, they include setting up the bill schedule as a sponsor requests it so that we invoice the sponsor with the appropriate amounts and correct times. We did have 3 different types of installment billing that fiscal services will be responsible for doing and entering, and that was based off of how the amounts were being generated, how many, based off the amounts. We referred to in our training, we use the custom process, and that's probably going to be the most popular one to use in the future. A checkbox was marked to indicate whether we are to bill the sponsor for charges over an installment invoice amount, and that the sponsor should look for future installments on the account to utilize first. This checkbox is currently marked to not overbill installments, and we are going to review more advanced scenarios in the labs about this. There's also an option to consume or utilize the prepaid balance, which is what OSU has decided to do. So we will have that option checked. Based on the frequency of the installments set up by the bill schedule, the installment invoice is created and sent to the sponsor by fiscal services. And this occurs whether or not they have spent on the award. So payments can be received at any time after we've sent that invoice, and we will apply those to the installment invoices, as we're going to demonstrate that later. And so as spend does occur on the award, there are invoices created for that utilization using the same process as we did for the transaction and LOC to create that utilization invoice. And that will be part of our monthly batch. When fiscal services gets ready to enter in an invoice for an installment, there must be adequate authorized funding within the award. If the funding is not available on the award, fiscal will communicate with SPO to add funding before we can process billing. That's something that we definitely are going to get into more with specific scenarios and labs, and there will be communication between our 2 departments on making sure that information is updated. And as I mentioned before, the 2 types of invoices are created with the installment billing. The first one is actually that scheduled bill. And we're going to show that as it's a little bit different than the way we bill for transaction LOC invoicing, because we're billing a specific dollar amount. We're not billing on expenses that have posted. And obviously it is necessary to have that schedule already set up in Workday to have that based off the sponsor's requests. That second invoice is for utilization, and we are going to demonstrate that as well. It's the same process as the previous invoices that we have shown. And basically it utilizes those expenses that have posted on the grant. And the utilization of an installment invoice can occur regardless of the sponsor has paid it or not, as long as that installment line has not been fully utilized. We will use batch billing for both creating the installment invoice and the utilization invoices. So those will be part of our scheduled batches. Okay, now Sherry is going to walk us through the process of creating an individual installment invoice. And then she is also going to show us what it looks like to create an invoice for utilization for the expenses that have posted to the grant. Okay, Sherry.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Okay,
Yes.
good. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do a manual installment bill. And for the first part, it's done a little bit differently than we do cost reimbursable or transaction billing. We get into it a different way. We have to get in through the billing schedule. And so I'm on the award overview page right now for award 108966. That's for Genentech. And I'm going to go right into the billing schedule. Wait for that to come up. And I go down here, I have my billing installment line. So basically when we do the installment billing, all the heavy lifting's been done beforehand. We've already set up the installment line when we set up the bill schedule. It could be one line or several lines. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the related actions button here, and then go to billing installment and create customer invoice. And I have my installment all ready to go here. It's for $56,331 for Genentech, and it's an OSP fixed amount invoice. So I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And I'm going to go ahead and click on refresh. And took 1 second to do this installment invoice, so that's great. So, and just to note the customer invoice number that we have now for this award, it's CI-000-19580. And we can go in to the hyperlink here and look at that invoice. And you can see that we have an amount due on this installment invoice of $56,331 for Genentech. And down here, we've got the line for it. And just to make a note here about installment invoicing, how it differs from transaction type invoicing. The information on the customer invoice is similar to that of the other invoice process. However, since the installment invoices do not necessarily have expenses associated with them, they are treated differently from an accounting perspective. The installments, when billed, are considered deferred revenue. When there are actual expenses and the second invoice is created to utilize the installment, at that point, the revenue can be recognized. And then we can also go into the invoice to look at what accounting entries are behind this particular installment invoice. So I can just go up here to the View Customer Invoice and click on the Actions tab, Related Actions tab. And I can go to the Accounting action and View Accounting. Wait for that to come up and scroll down. And as you can see, there's 2 lines entered for the journal. There's one line debiting grants receivable for $56,331, which is the amount of the installment invoice, and a line crediting deferred revenue for $56,331. So next, I'm going to go back up to, actually, I'm just going to go back into the award again. So 108966. Okay. And this is one of the ways that we can go back and look for the invoice that I was showing earlier. So I want to view the sponsor invoices for the award. And right here, I can see my installment invoice for the $56,331. And then I just want to click on the related items right next to the invoice number here. And I want to go up to customer invoice and print customer invoice, since this is an installment invoice that we're going to send to a sponsor. I'm just going to click on the refresh button. And I see it popped in my inbox, so that's a good sign. There's the PDF right there. And here's an example of what it most likely will look like. It's very similar to the PeopleSoft RF invoices that we have going out now for scheduled invoices. But this is most likely the way the format's going to look. So I'll go ahead and click out of that. And so now what I want to do is just want to go back into award again for the award. And click on the billing and receivables and the billing schedule. Actually, I went too far. I just want to do billing and receivables. And then right next to where it says view sponsor invoices for award, where we were before, just go in and look at the award prepayment summary. And this is just the view that shows us if any costs have been utilized against this installment. Since we just ran it, nothing has been utilized on it. And then there's a column right here. It says prepayment consumed, which means basically utilization. Right now it's 0%. So that should change after we run our cost reimbursable invoice, which is what I'm going to do next. Just going to go ahead and go right into the award here to the related actions tab. And go ahead and go to award and create customer invoices. It's just like when we did the transaction cost reimbursable billing. So now we're going to search for expenses to utilize. And it looks like we have some. We have $2,199.64 to utilize against this installment invoice. So in the required field here for the invoice date, we're going to put today's date. And because this is a utilization invoice and I'm not mailing this to the sponsor or anything, I do not need to complete these because this is what would show up on the invoice. So I can skip that. So I can click on the invoice to be created item and click on OK. And then go ahead and click refresh. And just quickly go to the background processes and see again, amazing, 2 seconds. Like I said, it used to take several minutes to run a manual invoice or utilization. It used to take several minutes. So anyway, I'm just still amazed at that. So we're going to go ahead and click into the utilization invoice just to look at it. And as you can see here, it's got the net invoice amount of $2,199.64, but we have a prepaid amount applied. So this means it utilized, so there's no amount due. So nothing's going to go to the sponsor for this. And this is just basic information. That's the invoice number. And down here is the actual line detail for it. So you can see the credit, and then you can see the 2 expense rows getting utilized against that credit amount. So since we are not printing this out, we'll skip the whole printing the invoice section for the utilization. So now that we've have utilized against it, I just want to go back into that screen that I was in before. And I'm just going to go into it through the award again. Go to billing and receivables on the award overview page and go to the award. Before I do that, I just want to look at the view sponsor invoices for award tab again. And here you can see we've got the installment invoice. So that was invoice number 1, and then the related utilization invoice against it. And that shows up as zeros. So the next thing I want to do is go to the next tab, the award prepayment summary. And here we've got against our total prepayment, we do have utilization occurring for $2,199.64 as we showed in the utilization invoice. And this shows the remaining amount that needs to be utilized. So we still have $54,139.36 to utilize. And the consumption percentage has gone up to 4%. So we still have quite a lot of the invoice to utilize. But as you can see, you can actually see as we progress through the utilization of this installment invoice. So there's one more thing I want to show you. Just want to go back to invoices again. And I had showed you the accounting entries for the installment invoice. I can show you the accounting entries for the utilization invoice. So here, I just want to click on the related items tab, options tab, and go in and look at accounting and view accounting. And here we can see that deferred revenue was debited for $2,199.64, which was the amount of the utilization invoice. And then we credited, so these were the individual line items against it. They were credited to unbilled accounts receivable. So everything kind of nets out to zero there. So anyway, does anybody have any questions about this process and about the installment billing? No chat stuff? No chat questions? Okay.
There's
So,
chat, but it's just Amy Dudley stirring up trouble like she normally does.
oh, so what does Amy want to know?
Amy's offended that we're having sponsors send our checks to Detroit.
Oh, as a
But-
Buckeye fan, yes.
I was like, well, what's that on there for?
We agree, Amy.
We tried to avoid that.
Note or something so people aren't confused by it.
That
We've
kind of
combined
freaked you
with-
out.
We've been combined with University of Michigan. No, it's Chase Bank. That's the one location that the lockbox is. And in order for us to have checks come to Columbus, we would have to overnight them to Detroit. It adds time to the cash flow time. And we decided that it wasn't worth it. Now, athletics, that has more money than anybody could ever spend, they are having their checks come to Columbus and sending to Michigan. But we opted out of that scenario.
Okay, well, if nobody has any other questions or concerns, go ahead and let Bob take over.
Looks like there is one more question.
Oh, there is, okay.
Another one in chat?
Yeah, Geetha asked about the SPO will upload LOC document. That's just basically the LOC document ID, which is the identification number that we will be using to draw down the funds. And it's basically in the award document. So it's just a number, not an actual document, but the number. I think it's called the doc ID.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and keep the questions coming because, and we may not have answers today, but we can keep a parking lot and answer the questions or work with our trainer to find the answers out since we're all learning right now. So we appreciate the questions.
Okay. So, sorry. For some reason, I'm having technical difficulties. I'm very sorry.
Oh, there you go.
You can see the presentation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I can't. So You know, if everyone would please bear with me for just one moment,
If
I'm
you-
going to leave. I'm going to leave and come back because that seems to be the only way I
I was
can
gonna
get it
say,
back.
if you click on the storyboard, will that help you?
No, it doesn't. It's not doing anything. I don't, for some reason, and I've never had this problem before with. Okay. Okay. I'll disappear for a moment and I'll come back.
Okay, does anyone have any more questions they want to ask? Any predictions on the game tomorrow?
Lori, I'm not used to looking for that doc ID number on an NOA.
Nick, can you help to see where exactly would that be found? I mean, it should be in the Word document.
Question again, Todd?
I'm not used to finding the doc ID for the LLC things on federal NOAs. I've never had to do that before. I guess I just always assumed you guys did.
Susan just said it's the FANE.
Yeah, it's the federal
Oh.
award
Federal
ID
award
number
number.
on the NOA.
I know
Yeah.
for DHS ones, it's on like the third page of those standard notice of award forms. I don't know about other federal sponsors, but yeah, should be the FAIN number.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like just different vocabulary then. That's great.
I can't even see notes.
You can't pull up your presentation?
Okay, now I can't. So can people see Lori's presentation of the, okay. So I guess, Lori, I'll just let you know when I need to have the screen
Yep,
advanced.
I'll advance it.
Okay. Okay, Friday afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Friday afternoon and technical difficulties hour. Okay. So now that we've seen invoices and how they're created in Workday, we'll review the process for recording and applying payments. Next screen. So we're going to start off with a high-level view of the process. Then we'll discuss some specifics around the roles that financial services and fiscal services will play in the process. Items to note, the process for recording and applying payments to letter of credit invoices is different from what we'll demonstrate today. For letters of credit, after running the billing process, fiscal services will record the drawdown information in Workday as Nick showed us in his demonstration. When financial services confirms the drawdown amounts based on deposit information from our bank, Workday will automatically apply the letter of credit payments. And for our SPO audience, sometimes there's confusion about the difference between fiscal services and financial services. Fiscal services is the group headed up by me and Lori. We do the billing, reporting, and closeout. Financial services is general ledger accounting. That falls under Sarah Jackson. And I think Erica's in our presentation today. She's one of the financial services managers who will be confirming the letter of credit drawdowns for us. So those of us in fiscal services who have access to apply payments in PeopleSoft will be applying them in Workday after conversion. So those roles will continue. Next slide. So here we can see how the roles of recording and applying payments in Workday are assigned. The roles in red will lie with financial services, and the roles in light gray will lie with fiscal services. Leading up to this point, we've invoiced the sponsor for a cost reimbursable award or a payment has come in on an installment award. So financial services will receive the payment and record it in Workday. Financial services will also deposit the payment after they've recorded it. Then fiscal services is responsible for reviewing the payments received and recorded in Workday. And then we'll apply the payments to the appropriate invoices. Note the words record and apply. They have different meanings, are separate parts of the process, and are completed by different areas within OSP. So the process to record and apply payments is the same, whether payments are received for cost reimbursable or installment invoices. Because both use the same process and to reflect how payments will be processed after go live, we'll record payments for both types together in our demonstration today. Okay, next slide. The task we use in Workday allows us to record multiple payments at one time in a batch. If needed, the same process also allows us to record a single payment. When recording a batch of payments, all payments within a batch must be of the same type, meaning that all checks must be in one batch and all electronic payments must be in a separate batch. The process to apply payments to invoices is one at a time, although one payment could apply multiple invoices for the same sponsor. Next slide. So at this point, Mike will lead us through a final demo on recording and applying payments to invoices. Okay, Mike.
All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
All right, I know our invoices might say they're going to Michigan now, but I guess if you guys have seen the height video that we have for tomorrow, you should go check that out. That's pretty good. But don't do it right now because this is probably just as exciting. So you're just going to watch as I go through the process of financial services would do to record the deposit, and then how fiscal services would go in and apply that payment to an invoice. Right now, some of the security roles in the different training tenants and Workday are a little messed up, so we don't have access to do everything that we need to do. So right now I'm in as Erica Armstrong, just so we can kind of show the process. Once we go live, this is something we wouldn't be able to proxy in as other people. Just wanted to kind of throw that out there for everyone. But financial services would go in to a mass record customer payments. We would put Ohio State University here. And this is where they're going to go in to put all the payments that have been selected for today. Would be sorry, my mouse seems to be stuck there for a second. Let's try that again, see if we can get to where we're supposed to be going here. All right, this is a better screen. So we'd be Ohio State University here. We'd always be in US dollars. And our payment types, this would be if financial services had a bunch of checks that came in on the same day. So they'd be doing, like a check deposit for this and entering today's date. We're going to go through and act like the payments that we've received today are for the invoices that Sherry set up a little bit earlier. So we will set up one payment for the $10,031.27. The payment reference, they'd be able to enter the check number for that payment. We know this one was from Indiana State, so they could put the sponsor here. They'd be scrolling over. If they had the invoice number that was listed on the check, they'd be able to put that in. They'd also be able to enter the PO information or any other reference information that was on the check that would help fiscal services be able to apply the payment. So they'd be able to do this for as many checks as that were received on any given day. This one, we also know the other payment that for the invoice that Sherry set up earlier was for $56,331 from Genentech. So we'll put that customer information in here so it flows through to fiscal services. Once again, they'd be able to enter the invoice number or any other information that's on the check. Financial services would also have another box up here that would actually verify which banking account it's going to. It's not necessary for your information, just kind of to know that they'd be able to pick which account it's going into so that we could make sure it got into OSP's account. For this, we can kind of skip that step and just go to clicking the OK button down here. They'd be able to review the information of everything they entered, because usually we have a lot more than 2 checks. There'd be a little bit more to review, making sure all the amounts match up. Once that was done, they would be able to click done down here. And that would be pretty much financial services, role. The payments would now be in the bank for fiscal services to go in and, apply them to the invoices. Now, usually someone in fiscal services would be able to be themselves, but for security purposes, I don't have access to go in and do that right now. So I'm going to go in as Bob. Here we go. And someone in fiscal services, once we realized that the payments were out there and we had to apply them to a certain invoice, we could go to Find Customer Payments. And we'd be Ohio State University here. And we could use all different types of information here that we wanted to type in. If we knew a certain date that the payment came in on, we could enter that. If we wanted to run it wide open for every unapplied payment we have out there, we could do that. For this case, we're just going to do for today's date because we know we just completed the deposit a few minutes ago, so we know it's in today's. We'd be able to scroll down and hit OK. And these are the payments that have been created today. So we would, locate the one that we were going to apply. We can go with this Indiana State University payment for the $10,031.27. We'd be able to scroll over to the magnifying glass and by our related actions, our customer payment, and we could edit this. This information should all flow through from everything that financial services entered for us. So we're not going to be changing anything up here. We would just scroll down to kind of the bottom down here. And we could there's a couple different ways, like most things in Workday, to enter the same information. So with this, we could click on this button, enter the invoice, and that would flow through to the next screen where we would apply the payment. In this case, I'm going to kind of skip that step and just go to the Save and Apply. So this brings us to a couple different, where we're actually going to apply the payment. We're showing, the customer up here, Indiana State University, with the day the payment came in, and then the transaction date would be the day that we're applying the payment. The check number, if there's any information we need to type in, we can put it in here. This field is kind of, as we start applying the payment to different invoices, our remaining amount to apply will go down to 0. And similar to PeopleSoft, this is something that we have to apply the entire payment. We can't apply a partial. So even if we know that some of a payment belongs to an invoice, we can't apply it until we know where the entire amount goes. So continue scrolling down. This would show all of the invoices that are outstanding for the Indiana State University. We would just need to locate the one for the amount that we have. And it's this invoice that Sherry had created earlier. We'd be able to scroll over and update the payment amount. If they paid more, they paid a little bit less. We could put that in. Or if there was multiple invoices that they were paying, we could select multiple invoices and then adjust the payment amounts. Once we have that payment amount entered, the remaining amount to apply is now 0. So we'd be okay to go ahead and apply that. So we would just need to click the submit button. We should get a green check mark confirming that, that payment has been applied. And then just to, verify if we needed to that a payment was applied, if we were searching for that actual award, we could go into the billing and receivables on the award page. And just kind of looking at all the sponsor invoices for that. This would show us that every invoice that has been sent for this award, and then the amount due. If there was an amount due, it would be showing here. So we can easily look here and show that, this invoice has been paid. And I think that's kind of everything, with payments here. I know we're starting to run a little bit low on time, so I didn't know if anyone had any questions with that, or any questions with anything, at this point. Nothing else in chat? I think that pretty much concludes our demonstration and everything for today. I guess in the next few days, you guys will be getting a questionnaire explaining how we did. If you have any feedback, if you have anything like that, if you come up with questions at a later date, definitely, let us know or let Megan know. I think that's about it. I don't know, Bob or Lori, do you guys have anything to add before we let everyone go?
Yeah, just to say thank you, everyone, for attending
Definitely.
this afternoon. And hopefully you've learned a little bit more about Workday and can feel comfortable going forward.
If you have any questions, you can contact us directly, or you can go to our trainer, Megan Witt. I don't know if, or the enterprise project contact information. I can, do you want me to share that screen? Is that what you're trying to share, Bob?
Can you see it? No, I'm trying to share it, but evidently it's not working.
Well, let's see if I can do it.
There we
There
go.
we go.
Okay. So if you have any specific questions, you can always call us or contact us directly. Megan Witt is our trainer that we've been working with, and obviously the OSP grants managers have been working with her as well. And we are interested in, if you have any questions, we are going to start labs for fiscal services to start reviewing some more advanced situations and scenarios. So if you do have some questions about it, please let us know. If we don't know the answer, we will look for an answer and try to find it with Megan. So I think that concludes today's session. Thank you for your patience, and it's Friday afternoon, so have a great weekend and go Buckeyes.
Yep.
Enjoy the game.
Don't forget
Thank
to
you,
come
everyone.
back.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.